Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for visiting the YouTube channel for bestbiblecommentaries.com. In this video, I'm going to show you 10 new releases in areas like theology, biblical studies, and Bible commentaries. Before I do that, I invite you to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in seeing content like this. Like the video, that helps me out, and feel free to leave a comment or ask a question down below. The first new release that I have to show you is from P&R Publishing, and it is called The Warrior Spirit. Subtitle is A Theology of the Work of Christ by Owen, I think it's Strachan. I can't quite remember how to say that. He had a new release that I showed a few months ago. I think it was called Enchanting Humanity. I think that's what the name of it was. And so, but this is his latest work in theology, and it's on the work of Christ. He is Provost and Research Professor of Theology at Grace Bible Theological Seminary. You can find him on YouTube. I've listened to lectures and presentations from him. He's a very good speaker and very good author. And so, like the subtitle says, this is a theology of the work of Christ. So, for your consideration, The Warrior Savior. Great name. Next up is a new release by Carl R. Trueman, and some will be familiar with his book, The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self, which has seen a lot of success in the last few years. So this is, I call it a new release. It's actually a rebranding of a previous book that he wrote. The title is Crisis of Confidence. Subtitle is Reclaiming the Historic Faith in a Culture Consumed with Individualism and Identity. So, Carl Trueman is Professor of Biblical and Religious Studies at Grove City College. And like I said, he's really known for the book, The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. I showed that on my channel a few months ago. So the book's just under 200 pages. And I just got this. I have not read it. So, Crisis of Confidence. Next up is a Bible commentary. This is the next volume in the Through Old Testament Eyes series. Volumes like John and Revelation have been published so far, and this one is next up. The author is David B. Capes, and he is the executive director of the Lanier Theological Library in Houston, Texas. And the subtitle of the series is a background and application commentary. So the one I've used from this series is the John volume. I've used the Revelation volume too. I've used the John volume more though. And it's a great insight into the New Testament's use of the Old Testament, and especially with Matthew and the way that he writes and some of the themes he writes about. This could be a valuable commentary for your library. So, for your consideration. Next up, a new release from Lexham, and this is called Zwingli the Pastor. Subtitle: A Life in Conflict, by Stephen Brett Ecker. I'm not sure if that's how you say his name, but he is Associate Professor of Church History and Reformation Studies at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. So I flipped through this one a little bit, and I think anyone interested in Christian history and Reformation history, and also pastors though, I think would benefit from this book. So it's a historical study, but with some modern applications. So Zwingli as pastor. Next up from Baker is by Gerald R. McDermott. It is called A New History of Redemption. Subtitle: The Work of Jesus the Messiah Through the Millennia. So this is an interesting approach. It's in 5 parts, and the beginning of the book is the beginning of history. It is the Garden of Eden, and the end of the book is the end times. So it is six pages or 6 parts, 33 chapters. So you'd call it a history of God's people, a history of God's plan. So it's like biblical history and church history all in one resource. So from Eden to the New Jerusalem, I guess is one way to say it. So it's just called A New History of Redemption. Next up is a New Testament Theology by Eckhart Schnabel. And I forgot where he's at. Is he at Trinity, I think? Nope. He is at Professor of New Testament at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. So, this is a big book. It's a New Testament theology, so it's going to be a big book. The excerpts or the blurbs are excellent. D.A. Carson praises the book. Craig Keener praises the book. Janine Brown. High praise, of course. Schnabel is an excellent scholar. He's written several commentaries that have been well reviewed. So the name probably sounds familiar to some of you. So this is as New Testament theologies go, this is probably about standard, about 1,100 pages, almost 1,200 pages long. So it's a New Testament theology from Baker Academic. This next resource is really cool. I spent some time flipping through this. I've read different questions. So this is a new release from Crossway. I think this is out. If it's not out yet, it'd probably just be a few more weeks, but it's called Ask Pastor John. So this is, subtitle is 750 Bible Answers to Life's Most Important Questions. So you might be familiar with the Ask Pastor John podcast and Ask Pastor John website, or maybe it's part of the Ligonier website, but so a lot of these answers are available online, but it's pretty neat to have them in a book resource. And I was just flipping through it because the questions are some of the questions I've never thought of before. I've never heard before. And so reading the responses is really interesting. Most of the responses are about a page or two in length. So it's shorter form content. It's like you're reading an article online, which is kind of neat and kind of helpful. You can just flip through the book, but it is divided into different topics. So if you want to read questions about marriage, questions about parenting, you can do that. And so here's an example. Can couples go childless on purpose? Another one is my boyfriend's porn a marriage deal breaker? Another one is, let's get a different section here. Why do I exist? Am I overworking or underworking? Has my career become my idols? If I read my Bible, why do I need preachers? I read the Bible, but I don't feel anything. What do I do? My sports teams lost the championship. Is this pain part of my eternal reward? That's right here. I have never heard that question before. Another question that I read was, I think it's, should I pray over my junk food? You asking? I have thought about that before, honestly. Do you ask God to make your junk food nourish your body? It's an interesting question. All right, so this is the next commentary in the Story of God Bible Commentary series on the Book of Numbers by J. Sklar. And he just came out with a Leviticus volume in the Zondervan Exegetical Commentary in the Old Testament series. So he has been a busy writer lately. This is a great book, or a great series for preachers if you're not familiar with it, if you're preaching or teaching through Numbers, and especially in the setting of the church. This series will be really helpful. For academics, it might be a better companion volume than your go-to resource. Nevertheless, it's been a well-received series. All right, from Lexham Academic is a new release by Michael Wilkinson, and it is called Crowned with Glory and Honor, a Chalcedonian Anthropology. You say Chalcedonian or Chalcedonian? The blurbs, Greg Allison writes a blurb, Michael Horton and Fred Sanders, so that's pretty high praise. It's pretty high praise. So Jesus defines what it means to be human. That's kind of a summary of the content. So this is part of a Studies in Historical Systematic Theology series from Lexham Academic. And last, we have the latest volume in the Focus on the Bible Commentary series on the Gospel of Matthew. This is just a wonderful series for pastors or Sunday school teachers or maybe youth leaders. John Hanna is the author. He has been a professor at Dallas Theological Seminary for over 40 years, specializing in theology and history. And similar to other books in the series, is extremely accessible and usually contains helps for preachers and teachers, like illustrations and applications. Here's an application section right here. So 7 points of application for that passage in Matthew 2. So not a lot of maps and illustrations, but a few here and there. So just understand what kind of resource this is. It's the Gospel of Matthew in 342 pages. So it's designed for pastors and laymen, for Bible studies, Sunday schools, things like that. So it's a great series. All right. Thank you. I'll see you next time.